Thank you for joining the March 2022 VMware TAM customer webinar. This webinar is organized by the VMware TAM organization to provide our customers the opportunity to hear great content and interact directly with great speakers that are delivering it, with the goal of making sure that you are getting the full benefit from your software. Please make use of the Q&A feature to ask any questions, and if your question doesn't get addressed today, be sure and reach out to your TAM and ask them to follow up. Before we get into today's content, there are just a couple of basic announcements. Our next TAM customer webinar will be on April 7th, and we'll have the privilege of being joined by Ahmed to talk about Secure Access Service Edge. If you're a TAM customer, please share the invite for this session with wide area network or identity management teams within your company to learn about what VMware is doing in this space. As I mentioned earlier, we want you to benefit from these sessions by interacting with the speaker. So if you have any questions during today's webinar, please use the Q&A feature of Zoom and we'll address them during the webinar. At the end of today's session, you will be prompted to fill out a simple 2-question survey related to the value you received from this session and any topic suggestions for future sessions. Your completion of this survey is a very valuable gift back to us and we'll greatly appreciate it. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and your TAM can make the recording link available to you. After a few months, the recording will be publicly available on VMware TAM Services YouTube channel. That brings us to today's speaker and topic. Sonny Nguyen is a Senior Technical Marketing Manager, and he'll be talking to us today about Skyline. Sonny, please go ahead.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sonny Nguyen. As mentioned earlier, I am a Skyline Technical Marketing Engineer. I've been in it for 6 months. Prior to that, I was actually a TAM for about 2.5 years for some of the bigger companies. And then before that, I was very similar to you all. I was a customer, running a lot of the VMware stack. So let me just say that, I've been in all 3 shoes. And so hopefully my presentation here today ties into all of that. Okay, so give me a second. Let me get out of here. Okay, so I am not 100% sure who's on and how much details or how much knowledge you have of Skyline. So what I'll do is I'll do a very brief introduction of what Skyline is overall, right? I will then go into, hey, what's there in Pro? I will then tie into the Insights API, Insights report via the TAM portal, right? And then last but not least, let's talk about the APIs, which you will tell that I'm really excited about. Okay, so with that, I'll just kick it off. As you all see, I'm actually showing you the Skyline Advisor. Those who are familiarized, those who have deployed Skyline, this is nothing new for you. Those who haven't, or those who ran earlier versions, you're going to notice that there's a slight change in the way everything is set up. Okay, so let's do the Skyline 101 for just 2 minutes. Okay, just bear with me. So at the end of the day, I want you to know twofold. One fold is, hey, Skyline is in 2 parts. One is a Skyline Advisor, right? So if you created an org, you can actually go into Skyline Advisor and then this will show up. Now, if you just did that, it will show up, but you'll have no findings, you have no collectors, you have no inventory, you have nothing. But you have the building block to start, right? So what you do then is you create a token. And as soon as you create a token, it then gives you a link to download a collector. The collector, by the way, it's just a Photon OS OVA. I mean, if you want to compare it, it's very similar to a VRO, VRA, vCenter. VROPS, I think, is also a Photon OS, right? So you deploy it, and all you do is you just add the token in, which then comes back to the advisor, and then you just connect your endpoints, right? I've got some customers who just connected the vCenter. They just want to kick the tires. They want to see what they want to see, right? And see if it's worthwhile for them to take it the next step. We've got other customers who would add in their NSX, who would add in Horizon, VRA, VROPS, Lifecycle Manager, you name it. And down the road, as we talk through this, I'll explain to you reasons why it's valuable for you to add in a whole bunch of them. All right. So As you add it in for the first time, what happens is within 24 to 48 hours, your findings will start populating. But before we even go there, I just want to show you a few little things in here. You may know this already, and you may not. You may be in the midst of deploying this, and then I just want to show you some things to watch out for. Okay. So as you can see, this one is running. I've got two collectors in here, right? They're both running 3.1. All right, which is the latest and greatest. If you, for some reason, are running 3.0, I would recommend you upgrade. Within the collector configuration website, web portal, there is an auto upgrade. If you can enable that, every time there's a new version, it will automatically upgrade. Now, I understand that there is scenarios where, your organization don't allow auto upgrade and you require approval and you have to do a manual upgrade. No worries, you can do a manual upgrade. And let's see, right over here, this is blogs.vmware.com/kb. We put a whole bunch of articles in here. The one in particular that I want to show you is the manual upgrade. Let's see, I believe it's one more. I'll go back to this as well, right? So here's a manual upgrade. So you can actually push the upgrade yourself. In the past, this was an option inside the GUI. Unfortunately, it's not. So you have to do it through command line. No worries. So once you do the upgrade and you get to the latest and greatest, right? You'll get all the features, all the advanced features that continue to come out. Things that I want you to pay attention to is when you connect stuff in, if it's green and it's reporting back information, then you're in perfect shape. This one is a little late though. It should be somewhat like this, right? Where it's always interacting, right? There are situations where you will have communication issues, right? It could be many things. It could be, where you deploy your collector and how it's talking to that network. Maybe there's a firewall in between, or maybe the server went down. In any case, when you see that, what you want to do is you want to take a look to make sure that there is no problem from the collector to here, because ultimately, if you deploy the organization, you deploy the collector, you connect in, but you had connection issue, you're not really providing yourself any value. You just made yourself do extra work. Other scenarios where I've seen customers having problem would be permission issues. If when deploying Skyline, right, there is a user guide to show you what you need to do to set this up, what permissions you need, and sometimes you might have missed a permission. So you'll get permission issue, and because of that, you're not collecting all the data that you need to collect, which means you're not getting as much value as you can. So as you can, and as you work through this, try to get everything to green. And then from a bi-weekly basis, just check up. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you've set it up, everything is working perfectly. 2 weeks later, there has been a change in networking. There's a change in firewall. There's been a change in who knows, but the connection between your collector and your endpoint might change. So it's rather you see it, you on a regular basis, you fix the problem, and you put yourself in once again, a better scenario to identify your problem, fix your problem, ultimately before you get an SR. All right, so that's one fold. The second fold is when folks talk to me about, hey, how they're doing with their Skyline, they always talk about two pieces. One is their active, proactive findings. The other one is log assist. As you may have heard from me and my colleagues, our goal with Skyline is not to have you do log assist, to create an SR, to create a problem. Our goal is to do proactive finding. So let's talk about the proactive finding first, and then we'll go over to log assist. Because while we try to make it so that way your work experience is better and you don't create service requests, we know that on certain equations you have to. Therefore, there are some functions in here that will make it valuable for you as well. Now, if all these are very basic for you, rest assured, hold on for a little bit more, because when I start going into the TAM portion, I think you'll be really interested. And last but not least, when I start going into the API portion, I'm hoping that I can get a decent amount of interest, because my goal here is to try to make the APIs simple to consume, but for those who are very savvy, I love to work with you, and I love to create more examples, like I have done with connecting to Slack, ServiceNow, PagerDuty, Jira. I've got more that I'm integrating in, that I'm working with other customers, and then once again, I'll share that back to the community. Okay, so you know what? Even before we go into findings, is there any questions so far that you guys want to share with me?
It looks like Q&A is empty at the moment, but if anybody has questions, feel free to just type them into Q&A and we will relay those to Sonny.
Perfect. Keep in mind some of the stuff I've spoken about in the last few minutes. This you all probably know more than me, but I just want to give people who are just trying to figure this out a really short and brief understanding right off the bat of what it is, and then when we start going into the deep sections of this, it all clicks in. I hate to provide too much detail and then people get confused of what we're talking about. That's all right. So as you all know, in the last few weeks, actually it's a little bit over a month now, Pro has been released. The way to think of this is Pro is, at the end of the day, 3.x, right? It started at 3.0, now it's 3.1 because of the TAM portion, right? But if you see your collector as 3.x, you're in Pro. And how you can tell is there's actually themes in here, right? But also, if you are a customer that was running 2.8, 2.7, 2.6, if you were running the 2.x series, you will also know that this menu, this GUI has changed, right? The goal here for dashboard is on a weekly basis. It could be a Monday morning, it could be a Friday afternoon, whatever time frame you and your team think is best. What you would do is you would go into the dashboard and just take a quick glance, right? What you see in the past is still the same, right? It still shows the finding, it still shows the collector and the inventories that you have tied in there. It also shows the operation and logs. What it doesn't show is the notification section. This is where I want everyone to pay attention to. It doesn't matter if you're new to Skyline or you've used Skyline for some time, because here's the deal. In the past, what you would do is you would go into the inventory, you would check around, you would go into the finding, and then you would more or less scour the data and then try to find what's valuable for you and what you want to remediate. Here in the dashboard, the goal here is if it's something that's very, very important to you, we make sure that it pops up in the notification. For this example, for example, hey, your collectors are unhealthy because you've got a few connection issue. But other scenarios could be oh, by the way, your certs have expired on your vCenter. You may want to correct that before it disconnects VROPs, it disconnects Horizon, it disconnects, who knows? But as you all know, as you deploy NSX with Horizon, with VROPs and everything is very tightly integrated, right? So if your certs were to expire, you may not even notice, but all of the other configurations do, which means you get disconnected. Now you put in a service request, now you're down. So as it bubbles up here, the goal is you'll see that, hey, it's going to expire in 3 months. It's going to expire in a month. It gives you and your team time to get a new cert, get approval, make a change to request ticket, add it in, life goes on. Once again, saving hours and hours of worth of work, right? Other scenarios, very similar to what I've said, is the end of life products, right? So let me show you, for example, right? If you were to tie in your vCenter, for example, what you'll see in the past is you'll see your vCenter, you'll see the name, you see the version and the build number. What you may not have seen if you're not running Pro is, oh, by the way, for 7.0, this is the end of life date. If you're running 6.5, this is the end of life date. And by the way, it's coming close. you may think October, oh, so far away, but reality is, when you're deploying and when you're upgrading, 6 months, even more, it just doesn't seem enough time because there's still a lot of legwork that you have to worry about, right? The prep work of the upgrade of the vCenter, the prep work of all of your ESX, possibly vSAN if that's incorporated, and all those other pieces that I've mentioned earlier on where they're tightly integrated. Having knowledge that, hey, it's coming down the pike is going to be a time saver for you. Now, what's also cool is you might have noticed that I haven't mentioned yet is for every one of these vCenter, it doesn't matter which one you pick, it will tell you how many critical, moderate, and trivial for that particular environment. Now, if you and your team manage all of the vCenters, it's still good to know, oh, by the way, for this particular vCenter, here's my concern if I were to do an upgrade, if I were to make a change. For this particular one, I have fewer because, the team I'm working with, they're pretty adamant on having the latest and greatest. But in reality is if you have a big enough environment where you have multiple teams, this team working with this data center, this team working with these data center, well, the great thing is each team member can go in worrying about their data center, can still identify, oh yeah, I've got these to worry about. All right, that goes back to what we will see in findings. So once again, the dashboard and the inventory, the goal here is at a quick glance, you can click through and start seeing some of the data without you having to go into findings, select the inventory of choice, and then identify what's going on. Now, both those things don't do as much as what is in findings, right? So let's go deeper into findings, right?
Sonny, before we move on, back on the inventory slide, there was a question asking if there is a consolidated view for all of the vCenters there.
No, unfortunately, there is not. I mean, so you see all the vCenters here, but if the question is can you click on the vCenter to see how many critical, how many? If that's the question, no.
Okay. There's a couple other questions related to collectors. Now might be a good time to do those.
Definitely.
Yeah, one person asked if, as far as collectors are concerned, should you have a different collector for each product or each network a product is on? But they were having problems once before, and that's what support had recommended.
I don't know how long ago that was, but nowadays what we're seeing is people connecting in multiple versions, multiple products within the same collector. My suggestion is this is if you have a small environment, a collector for that location should suffice. There is technically no limits on how many devices you tie in. Now there is a caveat though, right? So let's say, for example, you're a small group, you've got 2 data center. The recommendation is you deploy one in each data center. Reason means because while collecting the data, it shouldn't be a problem. The only concern we have, though, there are 2 concerns. One concern is if it's going across your WAN to the other side, you're eating up, data throughput that you can use for your production data, that you can use for your backup, that you can use for anything, right? The second piece is and then when I talk about log assist, every time, every collector, if it pulls log assist, it's going to be moving data there. And logs tend to be substantial compared to the data that Skyline's collecting, right? So if you're pulling logs and you have multiple data center, it's going to jump through your WAN, right, with both data center, and it's going to saturate your pipe. So having one in every data center is ideal. We also have customers who have, they have locked down dev, test, and prod, and neither will touch each other. Well, in that scenario, it makes sense for them to deploy one for every classification. But when it comes back to should I deploy one collector for one vCenter? You don't have to do that. Okay. Was there another question about collectors?
There was one other question, but it was around I think a Dell EMC Secure Connect gateway.
Okay. So yes, Yes, right, integrations. Now, those who have Dell equipment and those who have a secure gateway, the recommendation is to tie it in. I'll be honest with you all, it doesn't provide a lot of information at the moment. However, what it does provide is if you click in here, for example, let's say you click on this one and there is an integration here, it will give you a lot more detail of what's going on. Finding wise, there are some findings that do crop up based on that. And the Skyline team, the engineering team is building to try to get more of it. The reasons why I say that is because there has been an upgrade on what we're doing with the Dell Connect Gateway. There's a new version that's going to come out that's just going to have a lot more detail and a lot more features. So great question, by the way. One last bit when it comes to the collector. All right. So we have customers who have a lot of collector, a lot being 12, 15 collectors, right? Even if you have 6 to 8 collectors, even if you have 4 collectors, I want you to pay attention to, hey, if you're running 3.0, you're running 3.1, and then you've got some that are running older versions, upgrade the older versions to 3 or more. Reason being is because if you don't, what happens is you're stuck in a legacy mode, in an older mode, and some of the features in the legacy mode, or at least some of the features here, will not show up in the legacy mode. I'll explain more in a little bit, okay? I hope I answered all the questions.
There's one last one I think is related to collectors, and I think maybe specifically around the cloud services portal organizations. But the question is, what's the best deployment scenario if you want separate collector views for like infrastructure, test, and production?
Yeah, so if that's the case, right, what I would recommend, and the organization should still be the same, right? Because irrelevant if it's dev test prod, your admins are still going to be your admin. They're still going to be, working the environment. What you could do is you can deploy a collector for each of those to send it back to this org. And then from there, what you can do with the findings is you can isolate, oh, I want to look at the dev only, or I want to look at the test only, I want to look at the prod only. And then you can get your finding based on that. Now, reality also is if you've got a dev test prod, chances are they're all going to be the same. The only time there's going to be a difference in versioning and changes is if you and your team made changes to the dev, tested for 2 or 3 weeks, all looks good, kick over the upgrades to prod, let it sit around, make sure everything's good before a test, before you shove it into to prod. Right? Those are the only time that you'll see differences. And the great thing is as you're traversing from dev test to prod, as you deploy into dev, if there are new findings based on that configurations, it will pop up right over here. So you can actually fix some of those problems before you move it over to test even. So once again, more reasons, more value for tying all of those into one spot. Can you make it individual organizations? You can, but then your team is going to have to go into every single organization. Okay. So how we're looking for time. All right, good. So let's talk about findings, right? Those who are familiarized with Skyline, this is nothing new for you. Those who aren't, if you were to just click onto any one of these findings, right, what you're going to see is just the name, a brief description. Now, there are 2 important pieces. One is hey, there's always going to be a KB or a document that explains a lot of what is being notified of you, right? Which is, hey, there's a problem. You really want, so here's a scenario here, right? It'll tell you, oh, by the way, you should probably fix this problem. Now, this is not a huge fix. This is just a, hey, by the way, your configuration, right? But let's say, for example, something that, we all dread, log4j, right? Descriptions of what it does. There's KB articles on explaining exactly what's going on, how it's going to affect your environment. It also ties in the VMSA about, hey, this particular scenario is showing you NSXT, but in reality, it's tied to vSphere, VROS. It's tied to a lot of stuff, right? Now, when I was a customer, I would on a weekly basis go in to the advisors and take a look at all the VMSAs, find out what they are. Is it affecting my product? Okay, now I have to find out which box in my environment is affected in. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I miss a few boxes. Well, with Skyline, you don't have that issue, right? Because what happens is you'll get a findings and I'll say, hey, here's your problem, and here are all the boxes that are tied to it. What that means is there's no more legwork. There's no more guessing on which one you grabbed and which one you missed. They're all here. And as you upgrade each one of them, it will trickle off, and then this whole entire thing will disappear. So earlier on, you've heard me mention, if you're building out and deploying multiple collectors, try to push them to all to 3.0, right, and higher. Well, one part is as I said, it pushes over to Pro. One other feature within Pro that I think is a time saver is if you see this particular problem. Now this might be a bit complex, right? But let's say something simpler. If you see NTP problem, it's simple, but if you configure it and it's all working in your environment, you should have less time lag, less application problems, right? Let's say, for example, early in the morning, you and your team see this and go, well, hey guys, we should probably knock this off, right? It's only one box. It's only 10 bucks. It's only 50 bucks, whatever the number may be. We'll just script it through, fix it up. With Pro, what happens is if you do it in the morning, by the afternoon, it updates and everything is gone. So within 4-hour time frame, Skyline will let you know any changes that you have done within the environment. Unlike the 2.8 series, the older series, what happens is it takes between 24 to 48 hours before all that disappears from your view. What that also means is instead of waiting 4 hours, you have to wait possibly 2 days before you can see, or before your management sees that, hey, you've made the cleanup. Once again, the whole goal here is to save you time, because we all know you have X amount of coworkers to work with and Y amount of infrastructure to support, which is astronomical. So I hear you. All right. So all this, once again, is all in this pane of glass. It could be that, you may have teams that don't go into this environment. So what you can do is you can actually highlight any one of these, highlight a whole bunch of them, highlight individual, and you can actually export it out. And what that does is it creates a CSV file, all right? And that CSV file, at the end of the day, there it is providing the same exact detail that you just saw me show you within the screen, right? The slight difference is that it's in a CSV format that you can now copy and paste or just add into a Jira ticket. Oh, team A, can you all look at this for me? Here's the list of items that you can help me with. Team B, can you take a look at these for me? That kind of thing. All right. Let's see. You're going to realize one other thing is there's this hide findings, right? Once again, this is me trying to be upfront with you all, right? So if you see a finding, right? And normally we only show you findings if there is a solution or a workaround. If you see a finding, let's say this one, this log4j for VCF, there currently isn't a fix, that there's no upgrade. However, there is a workaround, right? So as you can see, there is a workaround. It will protect you from log4j. However, we can't check for that workaround, right? We check for upgrade versions. We check for configuration changes. For those kind of, it gets complicated, right? But what I was getting at is there's certain workarounds that we can't detect. So what you can do for those kind of scenario is you can actually just highlight, like if you did the fix, you can highlight that and you can actually do hide findings. It doesn't technically disappear from your inventory or it just disappears from your view. So if your management comes in it's not going to be glaring in their face saying, oh, wait a minute, what, Bill, Joe, Susan, you told me you fixed this problem. Why is it still here? So that's what it helps, right? So if you do that, what happens is it's still there. It's just hidden. And then when, like we do with most products, right? As soon as there is a upgrade, we take away or at least we diminish the value of the workaround, and we recommend customers to do the upgrade. As soon as the upgrade is available and you make the upgrade, you can actually unhide this. So that way there's nothing hidden whatsoever. It's not going to show up here because you actually did the full upgrade itself. All right. Now, some of you may know Skyline well, but some of you may not notice some of the other features within Skyline, right? So like, for example, upgrade recommendations. What you just saw me earlier on about the active finding, it's usually a configuration change or an upgrade of an individual product. I know you've all gone through this before. Imagine you're running 6.5. Imagine you're running, and you and your team are deciding, should we go to 6.7? Should we go to 7.0? Right? So for this scenario, let's say we want to go to 6.7. Well, if we want to go 6.7 and we want to do U3, here's the deal. By just doing that upgrade to your ESX environment, you just eliminated 51 findings. A lot better than, you trying to do individual findings and individual repair. You can actually do bulk repairs. Now, the great thing about the upgrade recommendation, of course, is if the upgrade, let me see if I can find one that is easier. All of these have issues. Interesting. What if we go here for a minute? Huh. Yeah, I got one. Okay, so if knock on wood, if you have an upgrade recommendation, right, and it all works well, what you can do is you can take a look and everything looks great. There's no interoperability issues. You look in and everything is all green, right? If you do, let's say, let me go back to the ones that do have a problem, right? Let's say you highlight this one. Well, what happens is it tells you, oh, by the way, for this upgrade, everything looks green. The only concern you should have is the vCenter portion, right? If you recall earlier on, I mentioned, hey, I've got some customers who just added vCenter. Well, if they added vCenter, when they try to look at these upgrade recommendations, they won't see any of these, right? Because Skyline doesn't know it. But if you tie in NSX, if you tie in VROPS Horizon, well, when you tie in vCenter comes in with it, of course, right? But if you tie all this in, not only do you get individual findings for these particular scenarios, but you also get this upgrade recommendations on what you may have problems with. Now, if you do have a problem, what you can do is you can go into the interoperability matrix, take a look around, see what you need to do. You may need to have some prep work to upgrade this environment before you do this environment. But once again, the goal here is to show you, to give you insights on possible problems before you even click a button. So that way you plan, you double plan, you do the upgrades, and less headache for you, less SR for us. I think it's a win-win for both sides. Right? Now, what's also new in Pro, which I believe it's gonna get very popular, is historical trend, right? You as an admin, you do a great job of upgrading the environment, fixing the environment. In reality, your boss might not even know unless you're telling them exactly which fix, right? Because sadly, if everything is running smooth, no one congratulates you. If something bad happens, it's always, what's going on? Why weren't you on top of it, right? So here, at least you can say, well, you know what? In these days here, take a look. It's starting to trickle down the amount of repairs that we're doing, right? If you take a look in the weeks, you're going to see that, hey, I got 6,000 here, but guess what? We just went down to 4,000, 2,000. Now, because it's a new product, it only shows this month, right? But as it goes out, what you're going to see is, February, March, April, May, and then you can see a bigger trend of how you and your team are fixing the problems. There is a catch. You may be you may find yourself to be so successful that your management, that other teams will tie in their infrastructure, and the amount of affected finding may explode. Once again, you can still tell your management to say, oh, so we're shrinking. Oh, by the way, we astronomically exploded. Reason being is because we added 5 more infrastructure, we added a VCF, we added all these pieces. Okay, so but the cool thing is instead of you trying to document and search and try to build this kind of history on your own, it's all built here. All right, so that's that. Now, just for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the, let me do 2 minutes or 5 minutes on log assist, because I feel that's very important. And then let's talk about the TAM portion, because I think it's valuable for you all, right? And then time permitting, if there's not a lot of questions, we can start going into the API parts, which I'm really excited about. So as I said before, our goal here is not to push you to do more logs, to do more SRs. Our goal here is to proactively define and provide information for you to eliminate your problem. With that being said, you will have problems. It could be state problem, hey, you ran out of disk space and it blew up. You were in the midst of upgrade and something bad happened. It could be user error. It could be network error. You name it. It could be application error. Application software. There are problems. There are bugs, right? So you put a ticket in. Unfortunately, Skyline cannot create tickets. However, if you create a ticket through the phone number, or if you create a ticket through VMware.com, as long as it's tied to this particular EA, it will show up here. Now, Sonny, so what? Why is that valuable? All right, so imagine this, right? Admin A put a ticket in, the ticket shows up. He or she now needs to pull down the log and then upload it to the FTP site, cross their fingers, hope that the upload went perfectly and the support engineer can see the data. Oh, it's corrupted. Let me upload it again. The time spent to download to your desktop, the time to upload to the FTP site multiple times in order for support to get to it, could be a few hours. It could be a few days. I've got a scenario where it took me a week just to upload logs because I was sitting in Boston and the data center was in El Segundo. Yeah, it took forever to pull down because there were a decent amount of ESX affected, and the bandwidth isn't the greatest, especially during the day and in the evening when backup is running. It kills me. Anyway, I have horror stories. So here, that admin can click on this, right? They can go next. And for this scenario, it happens to be these particular ESX servers, right? So highlight that, initiate log up transfer. What that does, of course, is the collector is sitting in your data center, running on the best bandwidth possible, right? Because it's your data center. It's talking to your ESX, it's talking to your vCenter. All of that is it never left the data center, which means it's getting the best bandwidth to pull the data, which is going to be exponentially faster than you downloading to your desktop. I even challenge anyone to try both scenario and tell me that download to desktop is faster. Lastly, it uploads to VMware. How do you know? It'll tell you that it uploaded. It'll tell you that uploaded completely. It'll tell you that it failed. There's no more guesswork. You don't even have to even ask the support engineer to see, hey, did you see the log? The question for you is, the thing for you is, by the way, support engineer, I tried to upload on this date at this time. It failed. Let me issue another one. Oh, it's green. You're good on my side. Let me know, what we need to do. Likewise, your support engineer, it depends on the kind of work that he or she is doing. They he or she may ask you, oh, by the way, the log you gave me, it was good, but it was 2 days ago. Can you pull me another log because it's very time sensitive and we need the data? They can actually request it here where you can click and say approve. And because it's part of that bundle, it's going to only grab those particular endpoints, those ESX, those NSX, whatever the initial SR or the initial upload was. It'll collect just those boxes and it'll just do that. If it's time consuming where they're asking a bunch of them, you can always auto approve. They're not grabbing anything they want. They're only grabbing what you allow them to do based on what you've initially transferred to them. Because then it just keeps your mind aside from that, and then you worry about other things. Last but not least, this is me coming in, seeing this particular ticket. This may not be the ticket that I created. So this may be admin A's ticket, but admin B, C, D, Z can still go in while he or she, the original admin is on vacation, can still click on this and then process that through. Once again, eliminating your time for, for lag, right? Because the sooner you can provide the logs to your support engineer, the faster the answer could be and the easier and faster for you to implement. So as I said, the goal for Skyline is not meant to be all and all for log and SRs, but at least there's a decent amount of value here that should help you in the long run. Now, between that and the findings, I believe you are gonna have more than ample information on what to do within your environment. So earlier on, I showed you this, right? It has everything from critical, trivial to moderate, and it has everything from every infrastructure that you have, right? I consider this as the bucket of findings, right? And bucket being that, you and your team go into the bucket, you decide which one is important to you, you then itemize 4 or 5 items to fix. Next week, you do this next thing. Now, because you're a TAM customer, right? What is also new is health check. You've done health check with your TAMs before, right? And you know what it takes to do that, which is you deploy an OVA or a Java, you pull down the data, you then give it to them, they then import it in. What you don't know is there's still a decent amount of work from a TAM perspective. They have to import it in, they have to massage the data through Power BI or possibly Insights, and then they have to then make sure everything ties up and then display it to you where once again, you both will work on, hey, is this important? Is this a false positive, right? So when it comes to massaging the data, that's still going to be there because it's a very interactive scenario. But when it comes to pulling down the data, transferring data, and then importing the data from the TAM side, it is extremely time consuming, right? If you have a great TAM, he or she may be able to do a turnaround within a few days. Unfortunately, when I was a TAM, it took me a few weeks because the infrastructure that I'm displaying is rather huge, right? So here, if you opt in within the TAM report, your TAM can then activate, the TAM services, which means that at any given time that you ask, they can actually run a health check within minutes. Big environments, 15 minutes. Small environments, 5 minutes. And within 5 minutes, a report will come up showing you everything about your environment. They still need to enter in the analysis of, hey, what they think is your strength, where the opportunity of growth is, where the risk that you need to pay attention to before it becomes a problem, right? So there's still that. They still add in a lot of input on, what is good, what you need to worry about. Last but not least, your TAM, similar to what they've done in the past, will set a priority set that is going to help you make your life better because it's going to solve some of your IT problem. B, this is unlike here, which is just a bucket of finding. This particular setup is it's a very catered set of findings to make sure that you focus on those pieces, because those are ultra critical. Now, what's really cool, and what TAMs may not even notice, is this is a proactive set of findings that were built within Skyline. This is a health check set of findings that were built with the original health check analyzer, which has been incorporated in. So what you hear from me is and don't tell non-TAM members, but for non-TAM customers, they just get this. Because you're a TAM and you enabled it, you get not only the proactive finding, but you also get the health check finding as well, which means you have 2 layers of findings. One that is catered for you to help you remediate your environment. Now, I do, and we do have customers that have TAM and Success 360. Once again, your Success 360, team will also provide you their custom report or their standard report. And it's layer on top. So what you're getting is if you've got a TAM and a Success 360 engineer, honestly, you get the best of all worlds, because you have 2 dedicated professionals helping you, as well as you have access to all the findings. Okay, I'm just doing a time check. How are we looking, folks? Any questions on what I've said so far? I've thrown a lot at you, by the way.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. There's one about Skyline reporting on VCF and VxRail compatibilities. Is that supported?
So yes, so at the moment, right, there are sections. If you have VCF, if you have VxRail, there are recommendations, stuff like that. When it comes to the upgrade recommendations, it's very limited at the moment. But no, I said at the moment, because there is some in the works that we're actually going to beef it up by a lot. Among the thing is Log Assist is going to support VCF and SDDC environment, right? And then, of course, some of these other functions like upgrade recommendations, stuff that will be built in there as well. Now, the great thing for everyone here is if you are a VCF customer, you've got a validated design that we would always recommend you stick to. The only time that we would ask you to stray from that is if there is a vulnerability that you may need to fix temporarily before the validated design is upgraded. But for VxRail, I believe you still have a validated design there. Bear with me for 1 second, because I think I'm running out of battery. Give me 1 second, folks. That would have been embarrassing. Can you imagine? I'm showing you all this, and then it just kind of crashed on me. Bear with me. You're still there, right? Thank you. It would be very embarrassing if I disconnect now, because this is the exciting part. So even if you're a senior admin, let's talk about API. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I answer all the questions?
There's a couple more. One, I guess we'll run through these real quick, and then we'll dig into the API stuff. Is there a size limitation for log bundles with the Log Assist feature?
At the moment, I have not heard of anyone complaining or mentioning that there is a log problem. But that's a very good question. Let me ask the engineers. Let me ask the GSS folks to see if they've hit it. If they do, what I can do is I can actually share that back. You know what? The best idea is to share it into the FAQ.
Okay.
Good question.
Got a couple more that just came in. Someone's asking about support for additional products and roadmap. I'm sure you probably can't talk about that even if these products were on the list. So we do see these questions. We'll probably not be able to answer them live today. And then one is about collector placement. You mentioned like multiple collectors, one per data center, is good for bandwidth, especially on things like log assist. If all of the hosts that are in these remote data centers are managed by like a central vCenter, they're asking if there's no way to like distribute collectors. I think that's true. I just wanted to run that by you.
That is true because at the end of the day, all the data is being pulled from the vCenter. Now, if that vCenter is tied to multiple data centers, because all those locations are small and all they care about is just having ESX out there. Yeah, unfortunately, for that scenario, you just need the collector to be as close to the vCenter as possible. The data that's getting pulled in, it's going to get pulled in no matter what. So even if you put a collector in those locations, right, it's still going to talk back to the vCenter, which inherently could actually be pulling more data than you want to. Good call. Good call.
There are a few more questions. I'll read through them. Some of them came in fairly recently. If you want to go through the API demo, then we'll save the rest of the questions for the end.
Okay. So everything that I've shown you here at the moment have been going through Advisor, right? What if, here's a scenario. What if every Monday morning, you want to have a method where it pulls the top 5 findings for NSX, the top 5 findings for vSphere, and then send it somewhere, right? That's the reasons why this API portion exists. Now, in here, you won't do much with. There are 2 links. The first one is the API link. I would recommend you read through this because it explains a lot of what it does. Among the things, what you need to do, like, for example, you need to create, well, first and foremost, you need to be added to the API user group within Skyline. You need to create yourself an API token. That API token, by the way, lasts for 6 months to a year, depends on how you set it up. It's just a long string of alphanumeric. It itself does not let you get in and pull data, by the way. It's just an API. What you do then is you need to create yourself an access token. And then with that access token, which only lasts for 15 minutes or so, you use that access token to get the data. And by getting the data, what I mean is you get all your findings based on how you want to filter them, right? If you're not comfortable, the second click is actually GraphQL. And the great thing about GraphQL is it's very similar to Swagger, right? What it is you get to kick the tires, right? This is the generic findings. You click on it with your access token, and the data will pop up. You don't have to worry about coding, you don't have to worry about anything. You just worry about how does the data look? What if I were to make changes to the JSON file? How does the output look? That kind of thing. And then once you're comfortable of that, you can actually save this off and then create your own script, right? If you are code savvy, once again, take a look at blogs.vmware.com/KB, right? I have, and I purposely write a bunch of stuff to make things easier. Let me show you. I'm going to take a quick look. Creating a ticket to ServiceNow, right? And if you keep looking down here, and I would recommend you all bookmark this website because my colleagues provides a lot of insights on how to leverage and best use Skyline. I tend to write a lot of how do you make the API so much easier by all my examples, right? So like, for example, this is, hey, you exported the CSV. This is how you send it into ServiceNow. You just change your user account. You just change your endpoint, or your ServiceNow endpoint, and voila, it comes in. I even made videos of it to make sure that what I'm showing you just works. If you were to follow these steps, it will work. Once again, trying to eliminate the amount of time it takes for you to actually develop the code, test it out. You can see my example and manipulate it any way you want. I've got PagerDuty, I've got Jira. I have a few other ones that I said earlier on. I was working with other companies, right? So those, as I finish with those, I will populate them in here. If it's something that you were interested in, guess what? Now you get to see what it looks like. if it's something that you may want to see down the road, that's fine too. I show all of this using curl. I show all this using Power CLI. The reason is because if you're savvy, you're probably going to do in any other way you want. If you're not comfortable and you're new to coding and you're new to API, I want to show you something that you can get used to that is very easy, right? See, here's a GraphQL example. And to make it even better, I actually created this. This is a fling that I just published a few days ago. This is the Skyline Automation Toolkit. Earlier on, everything that you've heard me mentioning is that, hey, Skyline reports on your findings. It's up to you to do the repairs. We provide you insights on how to repair it, but it's always up to you to repair. From an engineering perspective, the team is not ready to go beyond read-only, and rightly so, because there's a lot of complications with that. From my side is I actually want to show you how to remediate. Now, it may be something a little bit too much for you all, and you may want to step away, but it may be something that helps you if you're already having a handful of codes to fix some of your problems. So here is an example. Let me see if I can, there it is. All right. So I pointed out that if you're going to do this, read the user manual. I post a bunch of videos on how to do everything, and I keep going, right? But here's one example, right? Without knowing any coding, right? You install the module, right? And all you have to do is Skyline com. And here are some of the options that you have. As long as you add your token into your configuration, which is spelled out in the user guide, you can do this. Get findings, right? I just want a list of all my findings. Voila. Not knowing any code other than typing in this one line, you can see here are all my findings. Here are the boxes that are affected by it, and here are how many. I made it even simpler by saying, well, you know what? Let's do severity. Right? You get all this. Now, we can go deeper and we can provide a lot more detail, but the point I was getting at is if you have a Monday morning script that runs, grabs this, and then sends this data over to Jira, you just eliminated hours worth of work of figuring out all that in the GUI, going into Jira, going into PagerDuty, adding all that in manually, copy, paste, it takes time. So if you can automate this and then send, as I said, the vSphere findings over to the vSphere team, the NSX finding to the vSphere/networking team, you just made a scenario where you and your team can work better together. All right, I can go even deeper and I can go even more technical, but the thought, of course, is I just want to give you all a brief understanding of what you can do within this space. Right? And any questions? Any more questions?
Thanks for the demo on the API stuff. There are a few other questions not related to that, but
okay.
If folks have questions, feel free to type them in. We'll cover the ones that are in the queue right now, and then we'll circle back to the API questions. One of the questions is around the Dell EMC integration that you showed earlier. Does that will that eventually replace virtual appliances like the ESRS from EMC, or will they continue to be independent like they are today?
That's a very good question.
Or can we not discuss roadmap? But I think that you're free to use that answer if you need to.
so I can't tell you definitively what's going on, but let me give a little bit of a thought. Is what Skyline connects in and does with it is more about findings and stuff like that. What the the secure gateway and all the appliances that go with that, it does a lot more. Now with Dell being a separate company with VMware, that's another scenario where what we could do is for those who are really interested, we could always set up a roadmap discussion, and we can spell a little bit into that. But unfortunately, even I believe the engineers are still working out all of the options there. Sorry for having a not answer.
No, I think that's a fair answer, and right. So I guess the takeaway would be to work with your TAM to arrange those conversations for direct follow up, which is
exactly,
I think, great guidance.
Yeah.
So I've got one more. It's a VRA specific question about
okay.
When you set up that endpoint, does VRA need to be running in multi-tenancy to work with Skyline? I looked at the documentation. I couldn't find an answer, so I've saved that one for you.
You know what? That's a very good question. I may need to get back to you. Please remind me about that. I'll make it a point to point to details on what's required and like that.
Right, and
okay.
Randy, if you'd want to work with your TAM just to make sure that follow up gets back to you, I think that'd be the best way to make that happen.
Yeah.
All right, and then a tough one, right? So let's say I already have VCF and it checks all of my versioning and makes sure that like I'm running the right versions and I don't have trouble doing upgrades. And I already have things like VROPs that are sending me alerts. What's the value in setting up another tool like this when my ops teams already have a lot of the information?
Very cool, very good. Now you're right. You're right. If everything is running smoothly, ideally, where's the value in Skyline, right? Well, the value in Skyline is still, if you're pulling logs for certain problems, it's still going to be valuable there. Likewise, if you have issues, even though your design is running the latest and greatest, you may still have flaws, right? And this spells it out. Now it just gives you more insight on, oh, by the way, log4j, even though I run the latest and greatest, it's still there. Here's the workaround temporarily. Once again, it doesn't change your versioning. It just gives you insights on how to fix what you have already. Also, as you're upgrading your environment, it could be scenarios where there are scenarios where you may have missed a few upgrades along the way. Well, as you're upgrading, you're going to see it in here as the configuration changes, right? Not only in inventory, but possibly in findings as well. And last but not least, what I forgot to mention, which I feel is very important, right? Because every time I talk to customers, I always talk about, hey, there's a CVE, there's a VMSA. Well, Skyline actually tells you about state changes or state configuration as well, right? This has nothing to do with upgrades. This has nothing to do with versioning. It just has to do with your environment. For this scenario, for example, hey, this is an NSX Edge. SSH has been enabled, which is kind of odd. And because there's been activity, it could be a program that comes in, checks, updates, backup, configs, possibly. But there's a permission problem. There's a login problem because it just ate up 100% of your environment. It's only a few boxes. Now these, a load balancer may be a problem. This may be a problem, but if it's really an edge, like, an edge gateway that is tied to hundreds of VMs, that one particular box can take out hundreds of machines that possibly could be sitting in your VCF environment. So on one side, I do agree. If you have to deploy yet another management stack to take a look at more stuff that may be comparable, yes, it's going to provide more work for you. But my thought is this, is even if it provides a little bit more work, but it solves, crisis, I think it's worth it. Now, once again, that's up to you and your team, but that's my recommendation. I hope that I answer the, Skyline for VCF.
Yeah, I think that was helpful. Yeah. And then is there still a a Skyline integration for VROPs, like a management
There
pack?
is, there is. So there is still a management pack for VROPs. Now I have to admit, the VROPs cloud version has a lot more functionality than the VROPs on-prem. The VROPs on-prem still works. So the 3.1 version that I just showed you from the collector to, all the recent versions of VROPs, it will still work. So you still see Skyline findings funneling through into VROPs. And if you're a savvy group, you may have VROPs tied to VRO to start doing some of the remediation. The only thing is the Skyline team does a lot of work within this space. When it comes to the plugin, I have to admit that it's not as robust as I would like to see it. Now, this is speaking from me being a customer in the past, right? I would love it to be more robust, more feature function to provide more value. At the moment, it does provide value, but it does require a decent amount of legwork on your end. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that the Skyline engineering team do very little in that space. That's done by another group. So as we get new feature, as we do new functions, not all of it trickles into that plugin. Now, everyone here, all the customers here, if you feel that that's something that's very important to you, talk to your TAM. We have a portal that we ask for recommendations, we ask for feature requests. If it's something important to you, have it vote up so that way it bubbles up to the top, and then that becomes yet another feature. This goes for the VROPs plugin, but this goes for everything else as well. Okay, so we want to interact with the community to make sure that some of the stuff, some of the features that we do provides more value.
Cool. So we're getting down to the very end here. We got 2 questions left if you still have time.
Yep. And then I just want to point out one more thing, but go on.
Okay.
Go on.
So let's say I have Skyline collectors deployed pointing at one organization, but I want to move them to a different organization. Is there a way to do that, or am I better off just deleting and deploying a new collector?
There is. So what you can do is you can actually remove that collector from that first org. What that does is that collector now is disconnected from any org. It's still tied to all the endpoints. It's just not sending any data. And then what you do is you go into that collector and you point to the new org's token, and voila, it gets moved over. The caveat is all of the previous data and all of the previous history that was with it dies with the old org.
Yeah, makes sense, because the org is where it's stored, right? So it's
Yes,
not in the
yes.
collector. Okay.
And then within, I think, 13 months, the old org, if not used, is decom and stuff gets wiped out. And then, of course, the new org will start carrying the data for 13 months before it starts, cleaning itself out.
Okay, and then last question is more of a roadmap thing, so you may not be able to speak to it, but will Skyline ever be able to create SRs?
So that is one of the items that engineering is mulling over. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. At the moment, though, the goal for most engineering and even support team is we want to be more proactive in providing you insight to reduce that. If they do a small amount of work to create SRs, okay, but if they do a substantial amount of work to create SR, it kind of defeats the purpose of trying to be more proactive. Now, that's not saying that they won't. They're still mulling over all the value and what it takes to make that happen. So this is not the first time this question has been asked. It's been asked multiple times, and then it's once again it's bubbling up towards the high end. But the question comes down to, does it make sense to execute on or not? As soon as I hear anything, I'll definitely share it back to to all the TAMs. I'll share it back to definitely all the TAM customers first before I share it to the general public.
I think that is that's everything in the question queue here. If you want to,
I just want to add one last thing before I let everyone go. I know I ate up a lot of your time. Thank you very much, folks, for staying as long as you have. Thank you. What I also want to mention is my team has actually started this new badge, right? And what this does is, by the way, this is free, right? It's not like vSphere Professional where you have to pay thousands of dollars, go through 80 hours of videos and take a insane test. This is just, you go through 6 videos. It explains to you how, what Skyline is and how it fits. It explains a little bit about the APIs. It explains about everything that I think is pretty valuable. If you're going to be working in Skyline, you might as well do this just for the videos themselves, because I find them they're pretty valuable. And at the end of each module, there's only a handful of questions that if you have deployed Skyline, you'll know the answer. If you have watched the video, you'll know the answer. And what it does is it gives you a badge that says, hey, you're a Skyline professional, right? On one side is hey, to me, if a customer has these badges, I think it's pretty cool, because it shows that you've got skills, you've got dedications to your work, and you proved it. On the other side, of course, is we now have a list of folks that we can rally around, right? Champions like yourself, where we can say, hey, would you be interested in a personal webinar on some of the new features, some of the new stuff? Would you be interested in providing insight on how making it better? So as a customer, if you go through this, the potential is that you may be able to help shape the software for future releases. Last but not least, we give out swags too, so we choose 5 for every quarter, and we just send out hats, t-shirts, bags, and then just to say, hey, thanks for being involved. Okay, that's it for me.
All right, there's no more questions in Q&A, so definitely appreciate you taking the time to do this, Sonny. The session, was recorded, and your TAM can make that recording available to you. And then within a few months, it'll actually be posted on the VMware TAM Services YouTube channel. We appreciate everyone joining today. Please join us again next month when we'll talk about the SASE platform, and be sure to forward that invite to your wide area network and identity management teams. Thanks, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all.